If you're interested in decoding the complexities of China's national security outlook and its military modernization, check out Takshashila's latest expert capsule course offering China's Defense in the New Era. Visit school.takshashila.org.in and enroll in the course today.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to this episode of All Things Policy, your favorite daily public policy podcast from the Takshashila Institution. I'm Anushka Saxena, staff research analyst with the institution's Indo-Pacific Studies program. And today I'm joined by my colleague from the program, Bhumika Sevkani. Welcome to the episode, Bhumika.
Thank you, Anushka.
For regular listeners out there, I think you could take this episode as kind of a follow-on from the conversation I previously had with Shubhangita Reddy of the High Tech Geopolitics program on October 16th on some really new and rather drastic developments in the trade and technology war that we're seeing unfold in the world. And this development that I'm talking about pertains to no other than the latest regulations that have been released by China's Ministry of Commerce and General Administration of Customs. This announcement came around on the 9th of October, and it kind of expanded on the export controls China has already placed on a range of rare earth elements and magnets. And now this October 9 list kind of goes further from what we already saw in April of 2025 and includes some 5 additional rare earth elements and magnets, and also talks about implementing export controls on lithium-ion batteries, components, and technologies that are used to even manufacture these batteries, right? So for today's conversation, I'm hoping to center this less around the rare earths themselves and more about the battery ecosystem. What do we mean by lithium-ion batteries? What are their uses and applications? Why do the export controls, as it were, matter to us? Why should they matter to us? And what India can do, if at all it should do anything. And for this, I have my colleague Bhumika once more. And just for our listeners to kind of follow on and remember, these restrictions show China's intent to weaponize its dominance in the rare earth elements and the lithium battery ecosystem. They're drastic, they're naturally to be considered as a response to Trump's threats surrounding 100% tariffs. And even some restrictions the US has shown willingness to pose on China's software ecosystem. And they kind of amend the 15th July catalog of technologies subject to export prohibitions and restrictions, July 2025, that is. And these latest restrictions kind of have they play at the very margins. It's just about 0.1% use of Chinese origin rare earths or Chinese origin technologies. And that will make firms, intellectual property rights holders, and even re-exporting countries liable to punishment or penalty by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, right? Unless, of course, they've taken the right licenses and engaged in the whole process of circumventing the export restrictions through diplomatic means. And it remains to be seen how that will play out, right? So with this context in mind, Bhumika, let me come to you and kick off this, what is already shaping to be an interesting conversation. Let's first zoom out a little bit and talk about the global battery landscape. Where do we need them? What does the demand look like? And again, what do you see is China's role in the overall worldwide ecosystem, as it were? Over to you.
Thank you, Anushka. Thank you for that introduction. So just to brief up upon how China is trying to leverage its dominance in the entire supply chain for batteries and EVs, since you already covered the rare earth segment in the previous podcast. This looks at export controls moving up the value chain. So for batteries particularly, again, those rare earths like lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, all of these are used and refined. And then there are technologies that sort of produce these compositions which are specifically used for batteries. So lithium iron phosphate is a composition, nickel, cobalt, manganese hydroxides are processed. So the export controls in this is China has blocked specific equipments and machinery that are used for producing these compositions. So essentially limiting technology transfer to other countries who wish to produce lithium ion cells or battery cells within their economy, right? So to zoom out a little, if you were to look at let's say the battery demand, global battery demand. So in 2024, global battery demand for electric vehicles and energy storage surpassed 1 terawatt hours for the first time, which was driven primarily by increasing sales in electric vehicles. Now, electric vehicle batteries accounted for 950 gigawatt hours of this total demand, with electric cars contributing more than 85% of total demand, other vehicles constituting two-wheelers or three-wheelers. Electric buses is also a rising segment in this, which again is most of it, demand for which is again coming from China. Growth for this demand was strongest in China, which was 30% increase from the last year, and it was followed by the United States. But in the European Union, the demand sort of remained stagnant. China again dominated the landscape, representing not just supply but demand both. So it represented 59% of the total demand that was generated for batteries in 2024. It also maintained a tight control over the upstream and midstream supply chains. So the country supplied nearly 85% of cathode active materials, which are, as I mentioned, compositions used. So it could be NMC batteries, LFP batteries. Just a brief on that is that LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries, are mainstream type of batteries that are used in electric vehicles currently. So over 90% of anode material as well, which is mainly graphite, is also controlled by China, right? So nearly, again, all LFP batteries used in EVs in Europe and the US were produced in China, which underscores its manufacturing dominance in this segment. A slight distinction that follows is that the main composition used in EV batteries in the US and Europe are nickel, manganese, and cobalt composition. And LFP only represents 8 to 10% of their usage in these regions. But again, all of that, even if it's a small segment, all of that is supplied by China. So lithium-ion cell batteries in itself were commercially popularized by manufacturing prowess achieved by China. Previously, it was NMC was the mainstream sort of technology. So looking ahead, EV battery demand again is projected to more than triple by 2030. And most of it again is going to come from China and emerging economies within Asia, India being one of them. But again, the prices of battery cells, they represent 30 to 40% of the cost that goes into a battery pack, right? Which is then further utilized in an electric vehicle. So the prices are dependent on, of course, the supply of raw material, which is lithium. And in 2022, I think there was a sudden spike in the cost of lithium ion cells because of price volatility in lithium. So there's this over dependent on lithium ion phosphate batteries, and thereby the material lithium, which is again controlled by China, the supply of which is again controlled by China. So going ahead, markets are trying to shift towards technological diversification, especially sodium ion batteries and solid state batteries, which can offer an advantage in terms of supply chain resilience and explore materials which are less geographically concentrated. So, but again, Chinese firms are leading this transition as well. So CATL and BYD recently announced that they're trying to scale sodium ion battery production. They have plans of setting up manufacturing plants for sodium ion batteries by 2027. And then there's Haina, which is again a new entrant in the Chinese battery market, but they've already begin commercial manufacturing of sodium ion batteries and have already secured deals for supplying that. They've also announced a new product for sodium ion batteries recently. And the Chinese government is also steering solid state battery development through a national alliance that they've formed to sort of focus on research and development of solid state batteries, which is again led by your giants like CATL and BYD, and some academic institutions are also involved.
Yeah, no, Bhumika, I'm hearing you, and there's a lot of things to unpack here, right? Clearly, even 59% of total demand is a lot of control over supply chain from the Chinese perspective, right? And as you've highlighted, the demand isn't going anywhere. And so, in the immediate term, for China to pose the kind of export restrictions it has, it must feel like this is going to be leverage for a long, long time. Unless, of course, we see a rollback, it's likely that China is looking to weaponize this leverage. Not even looking, it is weaponizing this leverage. And in the short term, given the sustained demand, the applications, and the diversity of materials that China is providing, even if it is a net importer of lithium itself, that prowess in production, separation, and processing is precisely where I think your point about diversification and de-risking ties in very neatly. And so countries are naturally and logically going to look to alternatives, but till the December 1 timeline for the actual effect of these regulations to come in that short period, we might see some panic reactions surrounding stockpiling, surrounding negotiations and wrangling with the Chinese government on how countries and firms around the world can, circumvent these, be able to access shorter times for meeting of deliverables and demand. And I think all the statistics at this juncture, at least in the next 1 to 2 years, point to China significantly commanding a hold over these things. And yet it kind of in the long intermediate to long term is making China plus one a reality on its own. So interesting stuff there and lots to deal with. But just to expand a little bit on lithium ion cell and battery exports, what is the nature of the export restrictions that we're looking at? Which vehicles, which applications are the most affected? And maybe this is the point where you could also tie in India's dependence on China. What is India largely importing from China? How are India's battery makers dealing with some of these? And where all are they likely to be impacted?
Okay, so about the nature of export controls on battery cells. So in case of lithium-ion battery cells and packs, they have only advanced technologies with a weight energy density which is greater than or equal to 300 watt hours per kg have been included in the export control list. So weight energy density is a measure to gauge the efficiency of a battery, right? And this classification exempts batteries used in most mainstream EVs, consumer electronics, electric two-wheelers, and energy storage systems in the power sector. So these applications that I just mentioned utilize batteries with energy density ranging from 100 to 280 watt hours per kg. And India also imports most of the lithium ion cells within this range for these applications. But talking about India's reliance on the supply of lithium ion cells from China, so India's battery makers are largely dependent on Chinese suppliers of cells, which are then assembled into battery packs within India. As I mentioned before, cells constitute about 30 to 40% of the total cost of these packs, right? So Chinese companies like ATL, Guoshun, Hitech, and EVE Energy are among the top 5 suppliers of battery cells in the Indian market, specifically for lithium-ion cells. And Chinese suppliers, not just the Indian market, they're also leading the global market for batteries due to both their cost competitiveness and cutting-edge technologies like that enable fast charging, offer a longer range, and they charge within, let's say, 15 minutes. So due to the imposition of tariffs on, again, so India's reliance here is mainly in cells. But as I mentioned, the export controls do not affect the imports as of now. But what they do affect is India's plans to manufacture these cells within the country. So with increasing demand in energy storage systems, Indian companies are also trying to partner with Chinese firms to establish battery cell manufacturing plants. So a couple of examples, if I were to give, there's Amar Raja Energy with China's Goshen for lithium-ion cell manufacturing in India. There's also Ashok Leyland, which is collaborating with CALB, who are going to provide battery cells. But again, Ashok Leyland will be only integrating thermal management systems and software, essentially assembling a pack here. This was a recent announcement, and the full scope of their cooperation was not clearly announced because of this uncertainty in regulations. Another possible advantage for Indian companies who were looking to partner with Chinese firms was that it would provide them with a secure supply of lithium from China, which was a major bottleneck for Indian investors in battery cell production. However, the export controls which are now announced are likely to halt these partnerships, as any exports or shipments involving restricted technologies post July 2025 are subject to licensing requirements. As you mentioned, there was an amendment in July, so which was effective immediately. So yes, there have been delays in delivery of equipments to manufacture these cells.
Yeah, I think I get the picture, because even in April, when the first set of kind of export controls came out, there was the churning of a rumor mill, obviously, but then there were serious concerns reportedly raised by Indian firms, especially those who manufacture automobiles, including EVs, that it may not necessarily seem like a ban. And the Chinese, in their latest statements, have tried to emphasize that it's not a ban and not targeted in any country. And yet, these automakers were making the case that just the delays, the 45 day long delays, are going to hamper to a great degree at least the existing contracts, even as they find alternatives, which will clearly take a long time. And so, yeah, I guess one way out of some of these things is to collaborate, seek an exchange of know-how, like some of the projects you talked about that are being conducted collaboratively between Indian firms and Chinese firms. And yet, even on the Chinese side, we have to assess what is the kind of willingness that exists to maintain the sustained investment in the Indian market. Because even though there's a lot of discussion that there's going to be a thaw, there's bonhomie that's building in the India-China relationship, things are going back to normal, the export controls speak otherwise, right? And so do some of the other maneuvers. We've seen China raise the issue of India's EV subsidies at the World Trade Organization just a few days ago, and that clearly speaks to how China may want maybe enabling China plus one, but even if it sees that unfurling in front of its own eyes, it definitely doesn't want India to be that alternative to China that comes up. And if that has to be enabled, China itself has the capability to weaponize the investments, the conversations that it is having with India. So we should always keep that intent in mind, so that we can temper some of our expectations of Chinese firms and the government, right? So we've established that there is obviously some degree of reliance. Even Ola Electric announced a while ago that it might build lithium-ion batteries successfully, and yet at a larger level, this kind of breakthrough innovation may not be possible across firms and across different use cases of lithium-ion cells. So could you maybe speak to the problem areas that exist in this India-China partnership and in the dependencies ecosystem, as it were? And subsequently, would you have any thoughts on some of the good things that other Indian firms are already achieving, the progress that we are seeing, and what else needs to be done to be able to truly diversify or de-risk or find suitable alternatives?
Yes. So I would like to take from your point on China's willingness to sort of increase cooperation in battery production with India. So I would say there are mixed signals here, because in the latest statement of Chinese ambassador, there was an urge for expanded cooperation with India, stating that boundary issues should not define India-China relationship. There should be a comprehensive cooperation, and new energy sector is one of the areas which has significant potential for India-China cooperation. But then again, simultaneously, there are incidents of China bringing up complaints in WTO for India's subsidies, in India's policies in its to promote its EV and battery manufacturing. So the growing policies in India itself for promoting its own manufacturing ecosystem is seen as a threat by China. So there was an existing partnership between Exide in batteries and Swolt Energy, which involved using and commercializing Swolt's lithium-ion cell manufacturing technology. This was back in 2022. There was also Exide recently securing a deal to supply these lithium-ion batteries to Hyundai for its EVs in the Indian market. So I think partnerships like these were then that involved transfer of technology were then viewed by China as a threat to its dominance in the market. The Chinese government had also reportedly advised EV companies against transferring advanced EV technologies and against investing in countries like India and Turkey that can later become competitors. So there have been this mixed signals from the Chinese side on cooperation, shed some light on what are some of the options for India, right? So, despite this dependence on China, there have been efforts by some of the Indian firms to develop local solutions across the value chain, which might offer cost advantages for battery suppliers in India. So, Ola Electric was one of the examples that you mentioned. Then there's also Mahindra, which has set up a new assembly line and that is fully automated, uses an indigenously developed patented process. But again, the battery packs will feature cells by BYD. But then that manufacturing process itself is also one of the key technologies for lithium-ion cell manufacturing. And there's also some other options as well for India to look out for is that we already have a production linked incentive scheme for advanced chemistry cell battery storage, which has encouraged companies to invest in manufacturing capacities. But there have been delays by beneficiaries that includes three major companies, that's Reliance, Ola, Rajesh Exports. And the companies cited delays in deliveries of equipments from China in setting up these manufacturing facilities. So I think here the scheme itself needs to be reassessed and accelerated, wherein the scheme requires a stronger oversight in selecting beneficiaries, prioritizing those with existing in-house innovation capabilities in the segment. For example, some of the companies that were mentioned previously that have tried to innovate themselves and come up with alternatives. There have also been experiments with sodium-ion batteries. So maybe that can also be included, right? So, and in addition to firms innovating in this segment, academic and research institutions in India also possess significant capabilities to advance cell component and cell manufacturing. So it includes well-equipped laboratories to support technology readiness levels between 1 to 4, that is basic research and technology development, with some reaching up to technology demonstration as well. So this segment of the battery value chain is also witnessing public-private partnerships, which again are crucial to successfully commercializing these domestically developed technologies. The Indian market has another option is that the Indian market has also attracted other leading global battery manufacturers, which are Japanese, South Korean manufacturers, which also have possessed cutting edge technologies to set up their plants in India. These manufacturers again offer easier diversification options to counter Chinese dominance in India's battery market. Lastly, advancing research in alternative technologies like sodium-ion batteries and solid-state batteries, as I mentioned, presents an avenue for long-term strategic advantage. Exploring cell chemistries with lesser geographical concentration of raw materials can offer greater supply chain resilience as well as cost advantages in the long term. Again, continued investment and collaborative efforts across the battery value chain, coupled with strong domestic demand, can enable India to expand its capabilities in the battery technology landscape.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Bhumika. This was quite a fascinating deep dive into the global battery ecosystem. And of course, we had an excellent conversation on China's intent and India's options. And some of these things that you've mentioned toward the end, alternative technologies like sodium ion batteries, exploration of different types of cell chemistries that do not necessarily rely on geographically concentrated raw materials. All of these are examples of what we again previously discussed when we were talking about this export control list. These are examples of either material to material substitution or process for process substitution, right? So we either look at an alternative material that reduces dependency on this particular kind of weaponized domain, or we look for processes that make the production faster, more efficient, and completely separated out of the existing value chain or the supply chain, right? So these are takeaways the listeners should kind of keep in mind when they think of the de-risking or the alternative seeking question. But thank you so much again, Bhumika, for your insights on this subject. I hope our listeners had something to take away and tuned into this excellent explainer on the battery ecosystem and India's options, of course. And if things pertaining to China interest you, especially if you're looking to do a deep dive into China's defense ecosystem and national security thinking, also modernization of the People's Liberation Army, do check out Takshashila's latest expert capsule course offering China's defense in the new era. Visit school.takshashila.org.in and apply for the course today. So thanks, Bhumika, and thank you to our listeners for tuning into another episode of All Things Policy.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.